Allen or his crew after the botched 2-point call. Was he eligible? Was he not eligible? Did he report? Did he not report? Still waiting on that. Maybe the NFL can get on that quickly on this New Year's Day. Courtney Cronin, Matt Jones with you on Unsportsmanlike on ESPN Radio. And over on ESPN2, this show, as always, presented by Progressive Insurance. You heard the call there on 105.3, The Fan in Dallas. This was supposed to be the biggest storyline coming out of this game was supposed to be Jimmy Johnson's Hall of Fame induction into the Dallas Ring of Honor, and what an incredible moment that was for him at halftime. But it was marred, Matt, by the fact that there was a botched call from official Brad Allen, his crew was also part of another controversial call at the end of the Packers-Chiefs game a couple weeks ago, the non-call on a DPI, that ended up costing the Detroit Lions a win. It was a 20-19 win for the Dallas Cowboys. They escape at home, one of their lower scoring affairs inside AT&T Stadium this year. And it leaves a lot of questions about whether this Dallas team got off scot-free in a moment where, if this goes the other way, we're probably talking about Mike McCarthy blowing it once again in the late portion of a game. But now we're waiting to figure out, is this Detroit Lions team a formidable playoff opponent? I think they still are. I think they were the product of a really bad call, a really bad situation at the end of the game, but it's still a loss on their record. It still hurts their chances of getting the number one overall seed. And there was a considerable amount to play for Detroit, despite the fact that they will get no seed lower than a 3 seed in the playoffs.
Well, first of all, they got robbed. I mean, let's be real. They got robbed. That was a complete joke of a call. Officials are the last people on earth that don't ever have to apologize about anything. Seriously. Those of you at home, grow up and be an official, because you can do anything wrong. You won't lose your job. And when you're asked about it, you can look into the camera and just say falsehoods, and everybody just says it's okay. You can look and say, 70 is the one that told me they were eligible. No, they didn't. We have eyes. We saw the video. You're wrong. I'm not going to say he lied, because I don't know the man, but he was at least confused, and he stayed confused. I don't know why officials, do they not have social media? Can they not go look back and see that they screwed up? The NFL still hasn't apologized, probably won't apologize, because, again, officiating is the only entity on earth where you can screw up and it's never your fault. Now, am I biased because I one time got sued by an official? Yeah, but I won the lawsuit, and I hate the fact that officials are the only people that never have to say they're sorry. With that said, it's a huge, huge, huge mistake, because what's going to probably end up happening is Dallas is going to get the 2 and Detroit's going to get the 3. And when they play each other in the semifinals, which is likely, the game will be in Dallas because the NFL screwed it up. That is a complete shame, and there's nothing that can be done about it. I don't blame Detroit. Detroit is better than Dallas, but they may lose at Dallas solely because a referee couldn't tell the difference between 70 and 68. And as much as I loved watching Jimmy Johnson, who at 80 years old has immaculate hair, that is my takeaway from the game. The NFL official has made a conscious decision to screw up the playoffs and to who will host a major game by their...
Okay, so to catch you up on this, with 1:41 left, Dallas ends up giving the ball back for some inexplicable reason. Mike McCarthy decides he doesn't want to run it. They end up not being able to close out their series. They give the Detroit Lions the ball back, and Detroit goes down and scores. Dan Campbell says, I want to go for the win. They decide they want to run this trick play. You've seen the video by now. Brad Allen looks like he's acknowledging Taylor Decker is eligible. I'm watching this again. And he said in a pool report afterwards that 70, Dan Skipper, had reported as eligible, not Taylor Decker. So it ends up being illegal touching after Decker goes out.
Do you think he lied, Courtney? Let's be real. Do you think he was mistaken or he lied? Because those are the only two options.
Here's my take on it. I believe that when we heard from Dan Campbell afterwards, we'll hear from him momentarily because he was irate, and I do think that he is somewhat at fault for how this whole thing played out. But when there are trick plays that are run like this, oftentimes pregame, you will have a coach, players go up to the officials and say, hey, in this situation, we're going to have an extra lineman on the field. We're going to potentially bring 2 of them over to talk to you to throw it off as a decoy look, but here's what we're going to do to make sure that everybody is eligible. I believe that Brad Allen got this information 3 hours before this moment, and that in the heat of the moment, to put it like just in layman's terms, I think he had a brain fart. I think that
so
he didn't
had a brain
remember
fart. Then just come out and apologize. It drives me crazy that he had the audacity to come out and say 70 is the one that did. That is just a complete falsehood.
It does feel like a lie in that moment. I get you.
Okay, fine. He had a brain fart in the moment, but he said it an hour later after we had all seen the video. Everyone makes mistakes. Oh, yes, they do. So I am okay with the mistake. It happens. But the fact that an hour later he didn't say anything, and it is now Monday morning, and I don't know what time it is, but it's still dark outside, so it's too early. At some point, the NFL has to apologize, and they haven't, which means they won't. And that's what drives me crazy about this, is the arrogance of everyone involved in officiating in the NFL, that you can screw up and never acknowledge it.
Because they never do have to apologize.
But they should.
Matt, I'm with you on that, but I'll put my NFL hat on right now and tell you why they're not going to do it. Because they believe that coming out and admitting fault, whether it's for the non-pass interference call in the 2019 NFC Championship game to this call, that admitting fault to them ends up affecting their credibility, ends up affecting their product.
More the other way. When you admit fault, at least I understand that we're both living in the same rational world. When I sit and look at a person say to me, 70 reported, not 68, and with my eyes I see the opposite, I look at you and go, you are the most uncredible source in the America. I mean, to me, actually, Courtney, it has the opposite effect.
I understand, and I'm with you on that. Here's what he had to say. So they do a pool report afterwards. You'll get one reporter who's able to, when there is a controversial call, you get a reporter from the local chapter of the Pro Football Writers Association of America. In this case, it was a Dallas reporter who went up to Brad Allen and asked, like, why was there illegal touching on the 2-point conversion? And what Allen said, I'm going to read this verbatim. He said, quote, so we had a situation where if you were going to have an ineligible number occupy an eligible position, you have to report that to the referee. On this particular play, number 70, who's Dan Skipper, he is the extra lineman here, had reported during the game a couple of times. There were 2 other times that this had happened. And I'm kind of interjecting here, but follow with me. So he lined up at the tackle position, and according to Brad Allen, he didn't have to report at all because he had already been in the game. Number 68, who ended up going downfield and touching the pass, did not report. Very clearly, as Matt, you're pointing out there, we see Taylor Decker much closer to Brad Allen, he's not going over to the referee in that moment ahead of a 2-point conversion to go ask what he did for Christmas. Like, there's clearly a conversation that's going on at that point.
He's lying. He's either lying or he's still mistaken an hour later. And I don't understand why people won't just say that. Just say. Why? I mean, people will crush coaches, they'll crush players, they'll crush Roger Goodell. Why can't we just say, official, you either are completely wrong or you're lying, period. There's no other answer.
Well, they're getting crushed on social media. They're getting crushed by all of us on every sports talk radio station in the country right now. But it is what it is. They're not going to change a win or a loss based on an official's mistake. And that's why Dan Campbell was irate following the game. Take a listen to after the game, when he was asked about where his frustration comes from following the 20-19 loss.
We can see the frustration in your face. Can you just explain where it comes from right now? Is it the result?
What would you be? Would you be frustrated right now?
I mean, is it on the call? Is it on the execution? Is it, what is it?
I don't like losing, Dave, and that's what happened. We lost, and that bothers me. It bothers me. I don't like having an L. That's the frustration. I'm sorry. I don't mean it at you.
And that's another thing, Courtney, by the way. It drives me insane that we find these guys only if they criticize officials. They can criticize anyone else, and it's fine. But if you say something about an official, you get criticized. That's absolute nonsense.
Yeah, it's a loss that ends up having playoff implications tied in with it. As you pointed out, if Dallas gets the 2 seed, they're in line right now to win the NFC East. If Detroit gets the 3, they may end up seeing Dallas in the postseason, and that game would be taking place at AT&T Stadium, not at Ford Field. And that's unfortunate that it came down to a mistake late in the game. There is still a lot to unpack here, though. Why did Dan Campbell go for it a second straight time when they were backed up at the 7-yard line? Why did Mike McCarthy give Detroit the ball back with 1:41 to go? We'll get into that later in the show, but